Hi everyone, Bach Photography here, back with another video, so welcome back to the channel. I had planned to do a Sigma 35mm lens review in this video, but unfortunately a lot of my camera equipment got smashed on the weekend due to some careless people during our photo shoot. So I'll tell you more about what happened during that photo shoot later in the video, but for this video we're going to actually be talking about the photo shoot and looking at some of the photos from the photo shoot, and also we'll just talk about how we managed to pull this photo shoot together even though half of my camera equipment got completely destroyed during this photo shoot. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my content in the future. And I've also just released an ebook for free for anyone who wants to know how to take portraits at nighttime. And I really spent a lot of time trying to make this ebook really helpful and really useful to anyone who's looking at making really beautiful portraits at night. So I'm going to leave a link in the description for that ebook, and I really hope that you like it, and I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about this ebook, because I really spent a lot of time trying to make it awesome, and I really hope that it's useful to you and that you get a lot out of it. So all of the photos I'll be showing you today was shot with a Sigma 35mm f1.4 and a Sony a7R II. The Sigma 35mm is a really awesome portrait lens that allows you to see a bit more of the background than a traditional portrait lens, and also because it's f1.4 you can really blow out the background and draw focus to your subject and add some background separation between you and your subject. So here we are at one of the locations that we shot at for this photo shoot. It was probably about an hour away from going dark, so we were getting some beautiful golden light from behind our model Riley here, and I'll leave a link in the description to Riley's Instagram as well if you're looking at checking out more of her work too. So basically we decided to shoot here because we had some really nice reflections from the light, and the light was actually working sort of like a reflector in the scene as well, so we got a nice even light tone even though we're shooting almost directly into the sun. So the sun was behind Riley here, and it was about an hour before sunset, so it was really nice and low in the ground. We were getting some nice golden light in this image. So this is actually where I found out that my equipment wasn't working properly, because essentially what happened was, as I was setting up at the very beginning of this photo shoot, somebody knocked over my Canon 5D Mark IV, completely destroying it and also destroying the lens which is on that camera, which was the Sigma 35mm. Now, looking at it from a distance for a few seconds, you may not realize that this lens was broken. The autofocus is still working fine, everything seemed to be working as expected, but as soon as I started shooting directly into light sources and things like that, that's when you could really see that there was a huge crack in the front element of this lens, and it was causing some really crazy flaring from the lens. So how did this happen? Well, basically what happened was I was getting ready for the photo shoot, I was setting up my tripod, I put my Canon 5D Mark IV and Sigma 35mm lens on the tripod, and I put my tripod in a situation where it wasn't really that safe. I put it in a position where people were walking, and someone who wasn't really looking where they were going walked past the tripod, knocked it over, smashing the camera completely and also smashing the lens. So really this was my fault. I put the tripod in a position where it was precariously placed, and someone did end up, who wasn't looking really where they were going, ended up knocking into it and breaking it. So really I take full responsibility for this happening, and it's completely my fault for putting my camera and lens in that position. But I've really learned a good lesson to take more care of my camera equipment so this won't happen again. So now that we're in this position, we had two options really. What we could do is just say, well, my camera equipment has been smashed, let's do this photo shoot another time and just leave it there. And I think it would have been a really big shame to do that, because we actually got some really cool photos even after the lens was broken. Instead, what we did is we said, well, we still have some camera equipment, I still have my Sony a7R II, and I also still think that this lens, at this stage I thought that the lens was still fully functioning. So what we decided to do anyway was shoot a few more photos, go to a couple more locations, and I'm really glad that we did, because now that this lens was a little bit smashed, we were getting some really interesting stylistic lens flare and aberrations that you wouldn't ever see on a lens that was working properly. And because we were shooting straight into the sun, these flares were really accentuated and looking really massive in the photos, and I really like actually how these photos look in the final result. So lesson learned from me, even if you do end up destroying some camera equipment and the shoot seems to look like it's not going very well, you've still got to try your best, and you might actually end up getting something really awesome as an end result. So now let's have a look at some of the photos that we got with the broken lens during this photo shoot, and let me know in the comments what you think of this flare, because I think it's very interesting. It's not something that you would normally see, and although it is quite obtrusive in the photo, I think it works really well in a lot of them, and I'll show you my favorite photo as well, and you can tell me in the comments what you think of the flare. So this one here is my favorite. Let me know which one's your favorite. I really like this one because there's just so much flaring in the photo, and also it was a real challenge to actually edit this photo as well. We're going to do the editing of this photo at the end of the video, so stick around, and I'll also leave the raw files in the description as well so you can edit along if you would like. So they're going to be in the description, and thank you very much for everyone who's been sending me edited raw files that I've been leaving in the description on Instagram. I really do enjoy looking at them and seeing how you guys all edit photos as well. It's given me a lot of inspiration, and also I've learned a few little tricks and tips, that kind of thing as well, from seeing your photos, so thank you very much. Anyway, this is my favorite photo because the flares are just so crazy. You've got some floating right in front of Riley, diagonally going downwards to the bottom of the scene. You've got some interesting green flaring around her arm and also at the bottom of the photo again. And also the sun right at the top is flaring in a whole bunch of different directions as well, which is really, really cool. I think it would have been such a shame if we decided that the photo shoot was over because of the disaster of all my camera equipment getting destroyed, because none of these photos would ever have been taken, and I'm actually really happy with how these photos look. So it just goes to show that even when things look like they're not going to plan, it's always important that you just stick with it and keep going with your photo shoot, or keep going with whatever you're doing, and sometimes things will turn around and you'll get some really awesome results at the end of what you're doing. So yeah, if you're going to destroy your camera equipment, still use it. See what happens, see what interesting things happen to the photos because your equipment is now a little bit damaged. If you have a cracked lens, it's really interesting to move the lens around in context to where the lighting is, and seeing what sort of interesting lighting, aberrations and flares and all that sort of thing that happens because of the imperfections in your lens. So I would actually even recommend getting something like a Helios 44-2, some really cheap, like $20 lens, giving it some cracks, and just going out and seeing what the photos look like after you've made these modifications to your camera. So now that we've had a look at some of these photos, let's jump into Photoshop and actually edit one of these photos. These photos were actually quite difficult to edit because of the crazy flaring that was in them, and also because shooting directly into the sun really lowers the contrast of your photo, and means that in post-production you have to sort of add that contrast back in, add the shadows back in, and add the colors back in so that your photo looks nice and bold and really pops and is attention drawing to the person who's looking at the photo. So make sure to check out the raw files in the description if you'd like to edit along, and let's jump into Photoshop and start editing a photo. Okay, so the first thing I did is open the image in Camera Raw and boost the clarity really, really high, just so we can get some more highlights and shadows and contrast into the image, because basically clarity is just mid-tone contrast. Then I added some contrast as well, and you can really see Riley pop from the image now as we add contrast back into her face, into her jumper, and into her jeans and that kind of thing. So then I dropped the highlights and the whites just so we're not getting such a blown out background, and then mess around with the shadows just so I got a really nice looking shadow depth into the image. So next thing we're going to do here is make the entire scene yellow. I'm going to make Riley's face less yellow in a minute, but I'm just going to get an overall nice yellow look in the image and then fix the little bits that I don't think look right. So we're just messing here with the color balance and the vibrance and saturation just until we get a nice yellow color balance in the entire image, and then I'm going to get a brush tool and just brush out some of the yellows in Riley's face. Okay, so just heading the brush tool there and then dropping the color balance to a bit more blue and just reducing the saturation, and then just painting out some of those yellow colors in Riley's face just so it looks a little bit more natural and doesn't look too yellow. Okay, so the next step is we're going to pretty much just have a look at the entire scene for a second, and one thing I'd like to change is just adding a little bit more clarity into Riley's features. Just because we're shooting directly into the sun, it really does reduce the contrast a lot. So adding some clarity and some contrast into the feature areas of your model's face. If you're shooting into the sun, it really adds a new level of contrast to the image and makes everything just pop a little bit more. So the features that we're going to add contrast to are the eyes, the nostrils, and the lips there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just add some more shadows to the hair, just because they're right next to the flared light, and that's really lowering the contrast again in those areas too. So all we have to do is get a paintbrush tool and just paint in a bit of contrast in the form of dark shadows and also some clarity and a bit of normal contrast there as well. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. The next thing we're going to do here is just drop the blacks and exposure all the way down, just so I can use that as a masking tool. Then what I'm going to do is paint in all the areas that I would like to reduce the clarity, just to smooth the skin. So I'm not going to do the face here, I'm just going to do the arms and basically that's just to smooth them out and make the skin look smoother and hide any imperfections that you can see. So now that I've marked the areas I'd like to change, I've just removed the blacks and exposure changes. It's because I know where I've selected now, and then just reduce the clarity so you can see now the skin is looking a little bit smoother. Just add a little bit more shadows as well, just to make the image look a bit more punchy. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just a bit of skin retouching. Now I'm going to fast forward this just because it's a little bit boring and you've probably seen it all before, so we're just going to quickly edit any blemishes we see around the skin, and we'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do here is just use the liquify tool to make Riley's hair a little bit more full and thick. And this is something I like to do with any model that has really nice long hair. I think it just adds a little bit more to the image. Just making the hair a little bit bigger makes the entire photo look better. So just adding a little bit of stretch to the hair just to make it look thicker and fuller. And I'm just going to remove a blemish down in the bottom right because it was just bugging me having that little blemish in the photo, and also one on her jumper there. So that's everything pretty much for this photo. One final thing we're going to do here is just get the paintbrush tool and just add a little bit more clarity into Riley's clothing, just so the clothing pops a little bit more from the image. So just adding about 20 points of clarity here. And that's everything for this photo. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video and found it informative. Make sure to check out the raw files, they're going to be in the description. Please make sure to check out the ebook as well and let me know what you think of it. That's going to be in the description. And also a link to my Instagram, to Riley's Instagram, make sure to follow us, and also all the equipment that I used in this photo shoot again. So thank you very much for watching. Really looking forward to all the edits you guys are going to do on these photos, and see you in the next one.